The Final Destination franchise's origins tie back to our guest, Jeffrey Reddick's fascination with fate versus free will, inspired by a real-life premonition. X-Files' roots influenced the supernatural tone, but the shift to a feature film allowed for spectacular disasters, plane crashes, highway pileups, roller coaster derailments. That became a hallmark from the first film to the latest. Final Destination 2 added a ripple effect, connecting survivors to the fateful Flight 180, the famous flight that created a whole new generation of aerophobia. Final Destination 5 revealed itself as a prequel looping back to the original, which was a pleasant surprise to many at a time when other franchises were full-on rebooting. Did you ever think you'd say, "What a twist," for a Final Destination film? And that brings us to Bloodlines, arriving nearly 15 years after Flight 180. Bloodlines explores new ground, tracing Death's pursuit all the way back to a 1960s disaster, a family line never meant to exist, and the final curtain call for one of our horror heroes, the incomparable Tony Todd. In short, Final Destination began as a speculative TV idea, transformed into a 2000 film, and grew into a 25-year horror legacy, redefining the horror genre by making death the unkillable villain. And we have the maestro behind Death's design with us today, Jeffrey Reddick.
Welcome to the Red River Horror Podcast, where the channels of fear wind through the shadows of your darkest nightmares. From cursed horror films and bone-chilling tales to whispered interviews and the desolate echoes of abandoned places, we explore every sinister current. Grip your oars tightly and brace for the journey ahead. Now, guiding you through the murky waters, your host, Joe Zakrzewski, joined by Red River Horror founder, Eddie Caiazzo.
Both of you! They died and we lived! Get over it! I will not let this plane crash be the most important thing in my life! God! I'm moving on, Carter. And if you want to waste your life beating the shit out of Alex every time you see him, then you can just drop fucking dead.
We're ready, baby. All right, welcome back to the Red River Horror Podcast. I am your host, Joe Zakrzewski, joined by RedRiverHorror.com founder, Eddie Caiazzo. Hey, Ed, how are you?
Ahoy, Joe. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And joining us today is the one and only Jeffrey Reddick. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming back to our show. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I love the set.
Thank you. This is neat.
I'm getting background shame because it looks so cool.
Thank you very much. And we have a few Easter eggs in this set too. So as you do as well, I see.
Yeah. Oh, I see one.
So as we've dubbed you the architect of Final Destination. So 25 years later from your first one, and then I love your entire story. And I just thank you so much for joining us today. Just how you started with your letters to New Line Cinema to having your own movie, like having a movie that you created, like that's your brainchild, has turned into a franchise of its own. But I guess like New Line's not around anymore, right?
No, New Line is thankfully
New Line.
Yeah, when we've got some of the OG people that were involved in the original Final Destination. Richard Brenner is still there. Mike DeLuca is back at Warner Brothers, which is part of so it's
okay.
It's nice that we have there's been the consistency behind the scenes at the studio level, but also with the producers and yeah, it's just, it was great growing up at a studio, being a horror fan, and then, having a concept and a story that you came up with be brought to life with, some amazing filmmakers like, James Wong and Glenn Morgan wrote the final shooting script for the first film. And we had David Ellis and J. Mackie Gruber and Eric Bress on the sequel. And then, just that we've had a wonderful team. And this latest team, John Watts, Guy Busick, Laurie Evans Taylor, Adam Stein, and Zach Lipinski are just, so talented and such fans of the franchise that, talking to them before they started the script and then seeing what they did with it, and how I really feel they did an amazing job on making this a fresh news story that tied a lot of stuff together and was such a fitting tribute to Tony. And
Yes.
it's been a lot. There have been again, yeah, yes, you know, this concept and this, this kind of idea started with me, but again, I always love to give. There have been so many people that have been a part of it along the way, from even when it was just a idea that I was going to write as a spec script. My friend that
Mhm.
New Line that was like, don't send this to the X-Files. This is a movie. And then, I had a colleague, Chris Bender, who took it to Craig Perry and Warren Zide, the producers. And Craig has been such a shepherd of this project, with his producing partner for 25 years. Like I've known them 28 years. It's been a long journey.
Wow.
And you fans, I mean, again, the fans are the reason that not only that we they get to keep making them, but it's also you're the reason that the bar is always high. Like this is
Yeah.
something this is something they could churn out. Yeah, I mean they couldn't churn out one a year because it's too complicated. But they could churn one of these out every couple of years and just make money off of them. But everybody that gets involved really puts a lot of heart and thought and passion and respect to the project. So that's something that, just as somebody who kind of started this ball of death rolling. You don't get that a lot with a lot of projects.
No, and it's this like when we walked out of the theater after seeing Bloodlines, it's like, what'd you think? And it's like, you know what? I think what I love about Final Destinations is it's just the opportunity for creativity within it is just so huge. And that's what you said, like, where it's like, yeah, you could do these every couple of years. Like, there's just so much room to work with and just to be creative with it. And then also, as you mentioned, rest in peace to good old Tony Todd. We got to see one last time on screen, so I know we kind of gave each other a little nudge while we were watching, being like,
And
ah,
Adam and Zach were so great because his last chunk of dialogue before he left, that was ad-libbed. They
what's
said,
it?
yeah, they were like, because everybody knew that he was sick, and obviously this would be his last um film, and they were like, what would your message be to just the fans and to people out there? So I'm not going to spoil what his last lines are, obviously, for people who haven't seen it, but what he's saying is like from the heart. And so I remember the producer sent me that section, um, before the movie came out, and I just broke down. I was just because he was such a wonderful friend and such an amazing talent and such a fighter.
Yeah,
And just honestly felt so blessed that he got to be in this last one.
that's I'm trying not to tear up. No,
Oh, sorry. Hey, I'm not good with that. I'm not good with
no, no. It's
people.
totally cool. Just that was another thing we were talking about. Like, do you think he got to write that part? And it's just so nice to know that that was like a real human moment within fictional story.
Yeah.
And
And that's what
and
I love
I
about that's what I love again. I just keep going back to the people involved. Like that's what I love about them is it's never like, oh, well, let's just do this really fast and cheap and just make money off of it. And again, the writers and directors in this one, they grew up fans. I mean, of course,
Mhm.
it makes me feel old because
Yeah.
they were like, we grew, we grew up on your movie, and I'm like, you guys are way younger than me. Leave me alone. No, but they really approached it with that respect for the whole series, and that approached it as fans, and so it was like, what would we like to see as fans? But we also are very mindful of like there's a lot of love out there and a lot of passion for this franchise, and especially like a character like Tony Todd, there was so much
Mhm.
mystery around him, and it's like they really had to come up with a smart way to make sure he's very integral to the story, but you get some finality and some answers on his character, that I think is very satisfying.
Yeah.
um
Oh, man. And that's what I liked about Final Destination 5 is he was on screen a lot more.
a lot more,
A
yeah.
lot more. So it's like, all right, everybody, this guy, he's just a living legend in the
Yeah.
horror space. So it's always great to see him, and it was a very nice farewell
Yeah.
for all of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Jeffrey, I can't help but wonder. So I'd like to. I know you've done a lot of interviews with the Final Destination front, so I'm trying my best to not ask things that have been asked before, but it was impossible to watch every single one.
Yeah. I've
But
only had one question that surprised me, and I can't. I was like, I should write this down because nobody's ever asked me this before, and I forgot to. I don't mean that as like a diss. Like again, I am
no,
just like I said, as a fan, I'm just so grateful that there's such a fan base for this, and it's kept the franchise alive and brought new talented people, and gave them a chance to showcase their work. So I don't mind answering questions that I got been asked before.
so, well, I wanted to ask, what is something that you want the fan base, the horror fan base, to know? Because we have a lot of other things to talk about with what you're doing now, and you're
Yeah.
pretty much your entire career spanning horror. So I don't want to spend it all on Final Destination,
Yeah.
but if there's something that hasn't been put out there yet, something that you're just like, oh, I really wish they would have asked this, or I wish they would have asked that. Is there something that hasn't been asked that you would want to get across to anybody about the Final Destination franchise?
I really don't think so. I mean, that's a great thing about the fans is you guys have always and gals have done your homework. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like every theory, every thought, every thing has, like I can't think of anything that hasn't been asked. But I do think that Tony's last lines in this film kind of sum up what I had wanted the message of this franchise to be.
Wow.
It's fun. It's, because it is, I mean, it's a fun movie. People die. I mean, obviously I hate murder in real life.
Yeah.
It's like I get really, I'm very empathetic, so I approach most of my writing is for, I grew up reading Fangoria and how things were done. And so it's like, for me, it's always like, let's have fun and let's try to do things we haven't seen before. Um, but, I never wanted this to be a nihilistic thing where it's like everybody, you can cheat death, but you're just going to end up dying by the end of the movie. Like I wanted
Yeah.
people to kind of take away, like life is short. And, we always forget that, how short life can be. And it's just enjoy it. Try. It's hard. So it's not easy. It's a mantra,
Mhm.
but try to enjoy it. Every moment of it. So
All right.
That's
So
the truth.
I like that. So very positive, and that's how I view horror in positive. Like even when I see like a horror film that I'm not a huge fan of, I always take an optimistic look. Like I always take a just like something positive away from viewing horror. Like it's watching horror is all good time spent, right?
Oh yeah.
So I did have a question then, just to get into the nerdiness of Final Destination a little bit. So for those listening and watching, there are going to be spoilers ahead. Okay, so if you want to hear the rest of the interview, watch the movies first. All right, here we go. So in Bloodlines, there's something, your original idea in the first Final Destination film was that if somebody intervenes, it skips over that person. So the person that was supposed to die, somebody intervenes, and then it skips over that person because they were just saved and moves on to the next. In Bloodlines, I felt like they ignored that rule. Would you agree?
I think they did ignore it, and I do have to give James Wong and Glenn Morgan credit for that because I did come up with the design that they were dying in the order that death would have killed them, but they
Yeah.
added the twist that somebody could intervene, because in the original script, they always say like why this character win, and so I had to answer why there was a premonition to begin with. So the idea originally was that Alex had the premonition because he wasn't supposed to die on the plane, but everybody else was. Because again, when you're
Mhm.
trying to sell a script, the first thing the studio they try to find reasons not to buy it. So they're like, well, why is he having the premonition? So I'm glad that when we got, when James and Glenn came on, they got rid of kind of explaining that because I do
Hmm.
believe you can kind of get a buy-in, where people will accept something as like, okay, this is for Final Destination. Somebody's gonna have a premonition. Like we don't have to get into the who, what, where, and why. But then when you write a new movie and you don't do that, then they want you to explain everything. And I go, well, we never said why Alex had a premonition in Final Destination. And you're like, well, that's different. But yeah, they didn't do that. But the thing that I think is so great about this concept, and I've talked to Craig about this a lot. I mean, obviously the studio is not going to go too crazy, you know, in too many crazy different directions. But Death's design is to get you, but that doesn't mean that Death's design can't change and can't evolve or can't, you know, be a different order or a different thing. Like in this one, that's what I loved about the Bloodlines thing, is we had a character who saved a bunch of lives, and so it was going after all the people in that bloodline. So who's to say that with just this Bloodlines group, that intervention wasn't a thing, wasn't an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because that was one of the first things I thought when we were in the theater. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't. It would have then passed over. It would like if you intervene, then it would
Yeah,
have
but
skipped that person.
Death is a crafty son of a bitch, as they say. So that's again the beauty of it is like there are rules that you can set up, I think, but again, Death in my brain, I never wanted. I mean, that was one of the things that from the beginning I wanted to make sure of is I never wanted to tie it into any cultural or religious belief,
Sure.
because death is just a fact of
Sure.
life and everybody's afraid of it. So again, I think that does give you some space to be like, death design it, you screwed with like maybe the original way that it was going to do things. So now death is kind of morphed over a little bit. So
It's for everybody. Death is for everybody. We're all gonna get it.
Okay. All right. Now I mean, coming from you, that makes sense because that was for me. It was like, wait a minute. It's like, hey, did they just cheat me and not by cheating death and skipping over? And Joe's just like,
He's not kidding. This is while the movie is we're
that's
watching.
but that's again, that's what's great. You care like you wouldn't.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's again, it was like one of those things where it's like just let the creative process happen and let's see where it goes.
Yeah, right.
Because and then like I don't know, I just think it's been one of the more fun franchises in the horror space. Like 3 with the choose your own destination feature on the DVD,
Yeah,
which was really neat.
We had a blast with that.
We had too much fun with that because our first watch we didn't know that was the case,
That's
and
right.
the movie was over in 10 minutes.
That's right.
We picked Rome right off the bat.
So, would you get in trouble if you were asked to rank them?
Is that fair?
No, I mean, I've been asked that, and
well,
and
then.
no, and it's the thing is, I love all the films. Like I know that some, everybody's got their favorites, but just personally for me, and there's reasons, but like, I think 2, and then Bloodlines, and then probably 1, and then 5, 3, and 4. But I'll tell you why the second one is at the top of my list because I got to do a lot of stuff story-wise with sequels that I love. Like, I wanted to set up like, oh, you think we're following another group of kids, and then, I kill all of Kimberly's friends off at the beginning. The idea that all these people, they were alive because people in the first one cheated death. So I got to expand the mythology. Originally I was bringing Alex and Clear back, and there were some, issues with contracts and stuff where we couldn't get Alex back. So if I'd have known we weren't bringing him back, I wouldn't have killed Clear. But and also the inspiration because we had the basic story, and Eric Bress and J. Mackey Gruber definitely took it in a more humorous direction, which I love, because I was going off the template from the first film. So it was the same basic story, but just more serious. And I love the humor that they brought to it because
Mhm.
you know, we're dealing with a heavy subject anyway. But we were struggling for so long with that opening scene, and it was going to be a hotel fire. And I just remember I was driving home to Kentucky, and I got behind a log truck, and
Great change.
it hit me, and I pulled off the freeway, and I called the producer up, and he's like, "That's the opening." And so that opening is just my favorite because I grew up in Kentucky around these log trucks, and so and also just being that spark of inspiration out in life. And then David Ellis directed that sequence so well. Like it's just, I love it, and I love the humor. Like, that's
Mhm.
kind of why that's at the top of my list. But there's stuff I love about, every one of them, and it is, and even the ranking is like, it's not like, oh, here's my favorite and here's my, it's not like at my 1 year old and my 6 year old, there's a big gap there. It's like they're all like in here, but
Yeah, the
they're
truck
just
though. The
yeah,
truck.
like yeah,
I
like
mean, forever and always, nobody now, like, you have literally changed the lives of pretty much anyone that has driven.
That's why my wife wouldn't go see it.
Really?
I was like, "Do you want to go see the new Final Destination with us?" And she's like, "No, I'm still traumatized from that truck scene."
oh, that's hysterical. I like to think I joke about this, but I figure if I joke about it enough, some days something will happen. But I like to think I've saved lives
Yeah,
by
I
not
mean,
driving
people drive safer behind them.
drive safer. So I just want some kind of like award. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy, but some kind of award for saving lives.
But that's one of the things, Joe. Like, I really appreciated that Bloodlines. I thought did well. Um, because I was going to ask you about that. The humor, like, there's a way to approach this subject, like, of death, and obviously the first film is my favorite. The second one is very close to that. It's just kind of a matter of circumstance as to why they're one and two,
Mhm.
you know. But I thought that, like, yes, as we go along in the franchise, it gets like a little bit goofier, a little bit crazier, but it's handled with like levity, and it's that is something I was going to ask you about. So, like, the I thought what Bloodlines did well is it still, like, it was pretty serious for a while, and there were like serious moments and serious things happening.
Mhm.
But then when it came time for that Final Destination type death, it's like, okay, here we go. Here's like this the pane of glass, the lawnmower. It's like, what the hell is going to happen?
Yeah.
And that's something that I think it did really well, and something that carries throughout the entire franchise
Yeah.
from the second one on. Is it's like there's a goofiness to it, but it's not like as we get later on into the Friday the 13th series goofy. Like, it's not goofy, it's not silly.
Sure.
It's just like, all right, so here we go. Like, set this up for me. Where are we gonna? How's this person gonna die?
Yeah.
And I thought Bloodlines did that really well. It's just like it had the seriousness, and then when it came time for the death, it's like, oh, here we go. This is funny. Not funny, but
Yeah, no, and it's, I think that's why the Bloodlines angle is so interesting because the family unit already gives you some built-in, empathy that is not necessarily there when you just have a group of friends or coworkers. Um, and they also like this played out more as a mystery, from the beginning in a way. So it still had the what you expect from a Final Destination movie, but it had this kind of mystery angle that in familial stuff, and it is always a fine line because there is inherent humor in these movies, and you want people to kind of, or at least with the Final Destination franchise, we want people to like go in and feel, but also have a blast and leave the theater feeling like,
Oh, yeah.
like they're on a high. So, if certainly, and there could be a version of this where it's a lot darker, and I think there's obviously a place for that, but I think Final Destination has found that, it's got kind of a wide appeal. Like I know a lot of people that won't watch horror movies, but they'll watch Final Destination movies,
yeah.
and it's because they get scared, but there's that humor there, and there's that just the level of it's just outlandish enough where you still think it could happen to you. And like when the glass and people, the guy's chewing on the ice, and you're like, oh my God, he's gonna fight it. That stuff is like that's where the good stuff comes in. That's the tension and the suspense, and then the payoff is always yeah, that MRI machine in this one, no spoiler,
cool.
but that is like in my new like top 3 kills of the franchise.
That was pretty wild. Like I had no idea how that was going to turn out.
Oh yeah,
that from start to finish.
It was yeah. They did it, and it was the writing, directing, the way they shot it, the acting, the emotional kind of. I'm trying to still dance around spoilers, but yeah, the emotional connection that was there, that was like loving but fun, and yeah, it was just had a lot to it. Yeah.
It might be a spoiler, but I just have to know at the end, did you get any heads up that you were going to get a little homage thrown in there with your name, or?
Yeah.
Do they tell you that, or they leave it as a surprise?
No, I knew. I was actually we were trying to get I was trying to get a cameo in the film, but they shoot them in Canada, and I'm in SAG, and there's a whole union thing.
Yeah.
So, but I actually thought the name drop was because that character, the actor, I'm just blanking on the actor's name, but his character, the way he delivers his lines and what he says is just, it's very important to the story, but the way he delivers it is so fun. I'm like, yeah, that's.
The funny thing is though too, like we were, obviously again, you've been very busy, and I'm really grateful for your time tonight, speaking with us, because like I'm just like, all right, I think we're gonna get him for an interview. And the funny thing is, like, I'm a huge Final Destination fan, always have been, and when the name came up, Joe's like, and I'm like, what? Wait,
Okay,
you like that little
Dr. Reddick?
I'm like,
You get it?
I completely missed it. Completely.
You're still upset that they hadn't, that if you intervened, death wasn't skipping over people. So you're like,
might have been.
yeah.
Yeah, no, we're so excited to have you here that I don't know if you can see it or if you get this reference. So I got this hat in Kentucky, your home state, and that is a Derby City Mint Juleps hat.
Oh, nice.
Which is an alternate that the Louisville Bats wear.
Nice.
For like Derby week.
No, I know.
So,
yeah. See that. Yeah, that's nice.
I was like, all right, I got to do one thing Kentucky here.
One thing Kentucky. That's brilliant.
No, actually, I really, really enjoyed my visit there. Even though we were like in Louisville, but still like toured around, went to a bunch of different places, a lot of beautiful rolling hills and great, just beautiful driving.
Yeah, it's a beautiful state. It really is.
With a very unique identity, but we're not talking about America. It's like Kentucky's just really interesting. So it's not north, it's not south, it's Kentucky.
Yeah,
it's true. And it's a second state I've been to where I've been apologized for not having something I wasn't going to ask for anyway, and that was Mountain Dew. The waitress asked, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're out of Mountain Dew right now."
Mountain Dew is the drink. Mountain Dew Mountain Dew, but I like ginger ale. But Mountain Dew is like, yeah. They would apologize if they're out of Mountain Dew because that's a staple.
Yeah, the only other place that happened was when we were in Oklahoma City, and the waitress apologized that they don't have ranch dressing; they have their own version. It's like, I didn't ask for it. Like, we were even in a Mexican restaurant; and they had ranch dressing. I was just like, "Oh, is this sour cream?" She's like, "No, ranch." I'm like, but yeah, anyway.
Southern hospitality.
Well, so Jeffrey, just want to run through, I guess, just some things. Again, your horror resume is quite extensive. The last time we spoke was on Don't Look Back, your directorial debut.
Oh yeah, yep.
How do you look back on that film?
I've watched it. It's funny. I watch my movies when they come out, and then obviously my friends want to watch them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not somebody who sits at home and like watches them,
Has a Jeffrey Reddick marathon.
Yeah, I'm too busy. Like I'm trying to keep up with like all the new horror stuff that's coming out, and then all the kind of movies that everybody else is watching, but I've got my like Law and Order obsession that, every Thursday it's like leave me alone, I'm watching Law and Order. And then Dick Wolf got me with FBI. So, I have my TV show. I've got a lot of stuff that I get behind on watching. So I will only watch usually one of my films now if like a friend hasn't seen it and they're visiting and they want to watch it. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I get.
But yeah, no, I've watched Don't Look Back, and I'm still, still proud of the film. It was my first one. We didn't have a big budget on it. And I tried to do something a little different where it was like a kind of, what's doing it? Like, you don't know if it's a killer or a person. I did learn a lesson though. Like, it doesn't really work if you're doing a horror film if you can't show the kills because that's what people want. So yeah, like lesson learned on that one. But I loved our cast and the director was an asshole, but
I'm like, wait a minute.
I know.
No, and I'll tell you a film that I liked, and I remember, like, you were just like, you thought like I was humoring you, but I actually really liked Dead Awake. I just did. I thought it was good.
Oh no, I think it's good too. Like I can never tell. I can, because you hear so many opinions on the internet. Which is obviously the best place to go to have your egos or have constructive criticism besides this sucked and you should never breathe or you should die. No, I thought I loved Dead Awake. Like my only thing is, and this was just a complete budgetary thing, is since we didn't have any money for like visual effects or digital effects, like we kind of had to show the night hag. And in the script, we didn't see her as much. And so that's the only thing about that movie is I wish we hadn't have, shown the night hag so much because for me, it stops getting scary after a while. But I think the director directed the hell out of it. And I love our cast so much. Like, Jocelyn Donahue and Brea Grant and Jesse Bradford, who, Lori Petty, like we just, we had such a great cast on that film.
Yeah. No, I liked it a lot. I remember it because I remember at the time you were just like, stop, I'm getting the reviews, but that does.
Oh, I thought you, oh, okay. I didn't know if you were talking about that or, okay. Oh, so we talked right when it was coming out.
Well, so the funny thing is you actually helped in a way with Red River Horror. So I met you back at this is going back a long ways, and I'm not this much of a geek, but I took my dad to meet John Carpenter at the Philadelphia Comic Con.
Philly Comic Con?
Yeah, so it was 2014.
Oh.
And you had gone up on stage before. It was John Carpenter, and is it Jesse Weinberg? I should know this because he's a Philly guy. Weinberg, horror writer, Philly, an Alien Picture. Anyway, so you had got up on stage and actually spoke about Tent Square with Andrew Vandenhout.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, and I was like, holy crap. Like, I didn't know. Like, this was all, like, unfolding. And I just wanted to take my dad to meet John Carpenter and hear him. Like, this is all. So, with Andrew, like, I did a lot with Tent Square. Submitted, made it pretty far with the song. Yeah. So, then when it came time to, like, I think he was, he had been going through some things, but we were talking about a horror website, and he's just like, you know what? Like, I don't really have the bandwidth. I'm moving out to LA, like all this stuff. He's like, why don't you just take the idea and run with it? I said, okay. So I started Red River Horror, and like I messaged you and him and a bunch of people, and just like, what do you think of this font and things like that? So in a way, you were one of the people that helped the original version of RedRiverHorror.com kind of keep me going, to keep the project going, to bring it to where it is today. So thank you.
Oh, that's yeah. I remember the pieces because obviously I was a part of that, but I didn't realize the whole story. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and that's a real shame that 10 Square didn't work out the way we had hoped, because it was just such a unique platform.
Yeah,
we had a lot of fun with
it.
So.
No, it was, and that's Hollywood navigating the ever-changing waters of the industry.
Yep. No, absolutely. And then one more question, and then you can talk about whatever project you have coming up, and then we will, of course, let you go because we're appreciative of your time. So I could look this up online, but I never did because I always forget. All right. Remember Dumb and Dumber, right? Lynn Shay is in that, right? Is that Robert Shay's sister? Okay.
Yeah.
So she's in a bunch of your films too, and I know your closeness with New Line Cinema. I actually don't even know if I had a question. It's just so funny. Like she just pops up in all these things, and then she pops up in Insidious. It's like what? Sorry.
Well, I can no, but I can without having a question asked. It's interesting because Lynn Shay's obviously an amazing, talented actress, and Bob would put her, in a lot of New Line films, as one would do if you have such a talented sister. So I was a fan of hers, but I didn't actually meet her while I was working there. I met her after. So I got to meet her as a geeky fan. I mean, I got to, I told her of it, and she actually knew who I was when we started talking. She's like, "Oh, you're the Jeff the Bot." Yeah. So we hit it off right away. So to get to work with her, like on, the final wit, which also we had Tony Todd in that. And then we had Michael Welch, who was in the Day of the Dead remake. So that was like such a family reunion movie for me, with Tony and with Michael, and then again to have Lynn be in it. And then it was so great working with her that she came back to us with The Call. Timothy Woodard Jr. was a director on both of those, and he's a good friend of mine. And so she came to us with The Call. And of course, Lynn Shay asked you to do a project with her, and you're like, yes, yes, me lady.
Of course.
So that was a lot of fun. But she's been in so many films because I mean across genres, but because she takes her work seriously, and she's a wonderful human being. She's like the most love it, and she's like Tony in a lot of ways, like they really put a lot of thought. They never take a role and then just phone it in. Like never. It doesn't matter how big or small the part is. Like, they put in their homework as actors and actresses, and create the backstories, and know that they just put so much work into everything that they do. And I have so much respect for her too as an actress. And it was such a blessing to, again, just because Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite film. So the fact that I met Robert Englund briefly, so I haven't had a chance to really meet him, but like Heather Langenkamp and Amanda Wyss and Robert Russler, and Lynn Shay, and just the haven't met Johnny Depp, but it was funny. He used to, when he started getting big, he would leave Nightmare off his resume. And I, as a young guy, I would always get so offended by that, because it'd be like, oh, I forgot what his film was after that, but he would always put that down as his first film. And I'm like, you were in a fucking classic horror movie. Put that down, Johnny Depp.
Did he have a small part in Platoon after that?
Well, I don't know.
I'm not sure what it was, but I just know like when they started heart-throbbing him, they were like, he got his start doing this. I'm like, no, fuckers, he was in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And he had a half shirt on. Thank you very much. And he was
That's
sexy as fuck. So
just
And then, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Nightmare on Elm Street, then he gets eaten by a bed.
Gets
if
eaten
you
by a
haven't
bed.
seen it yet by now.
Yeah, sorry.
Have you ever gone on to talk about like what you wrote to New Line Cinema, like what your prequel idea was? Did you ever talk about that anywhere? Or is it
I've talked about it because sadly, when you're a 14-year-old, like I didn't have any master plans. Like, oh, I know that I had it in the treatment in a box, and when I was in college, I went to New York and then stayed. And so when I did go back to Kentucky to get my stuff, like somebody had pillaged through like all of my stuff. So a lot of stuff was gone, including that. And I'll get to the story, but the thing that's still floating around out there that scares me is I always wanted to be an actor. So back in the 80s, they made these like underwear that were like not bikini, they're not boxers, but the other kind that were leopard prints, or you could get different, like one would be zebra print and cougar print. So I had a friend take pictures of me in the underwear because I wanted to be a model and an actor. And
Gotta do what
And
you gotta do.
those pictures are somebody stole those pictures. So I'm afraid they're going to pop up one of these days. But the story, I just remember the story was what a 14-year-old with the knowledge from the first one would write, and it was kids at a high school noticing that some younger kids, their younger siblings were like dying, being killed, and they figured out it was a janitor, and then he got arrested, and then you know the final girl thought she was safe, and then he pops up in her nightmare, and it's like so
Yeah.
nothing brilliant.
Still.
But I do wish I had a copy of it.
I know. That's what I was like. I hope he just has it. But now, now you're doing so some writing for animation.
I did.
You did, yeah.
I did some projects for Netflix during COVID, which was amazing. It was great to work in the animation space. I worked on an animated series called A Tale Dark and Grim, which is based on a book series by Adam Giddich, and it's kind of a twisted tale on the Grim fairy tale. So we had a season. We got nominated for a kids animation Emmy. It was really cool. And then we worked on Samurai Rabbit, the Usagi Chronicles, which was a Stan Sakai approved. He was involved spin-off of his Usagi Yojimbo mangas, which are like worldwide. We're famous. So that was really fun. And yeah, I got to work in some TV, which, Midnight Texas on NBC. I got to work on the second season of that, which was a lot of fun. I love TV. I love working in it because you get to work with a group of creative people, so you're not sitting at home by yourself, like, banging your head against a laptop. But horror is kind of where my heart is, and so I've written some new stuff that we're packaging right now that I'm really excited about. I'll be able to talk about the next time we do an interview. But yeah, I've produced a film called The Other that's coming out June 13th through Quiver. Really excited about that. My friend Paul Etheridge wrote and directed that one. And it's about a family where it's so funny because we're starting to do our interview junket tomorrow morning for that. So
oh man.
No. It's like from 9 to 11, then a 15-minute break, and then 11:15 to 1 or something like that. So we're starting to do the little junk for that, but it's about this couple who can't have kids, and they adopt their foster child, and there's something that you're not sure if it's her or if it's something that's after her, but something starts really infesting this family, and it's just a really fun movie that builds, and then it's got just a crazy ending. It's really fun, and I produced another film that we're closing a distribution deal on called New Fear's Eve that we shot in Kentucky. And I tell people it's kind of like a mixture of Porky's humor without the nudity, but with, really graphic blood. So it's about a New Year's Eve party where this killer called the Doctor, the serial killer, shows up and just starts slaughtering people. But it's got a really raunchy sense of humor to it, which I love. That's just my
sounds good to me.
And it's got Felissa Rose in it. Dave Sheridan who played Doofy in Scary Movies, and I have a cameo in it. So I get to maybe die on screen. I don't want to spoil it, but we'll be announcing a distribution deal on that one really, really soon. And bunch of things go. It's a weird, like I said, the industry's kind of shifted. So, it used to be you could take a script out and sell it, and now it's like you have to take a script out and it has to have a director and some cast, and the cast has to, it's the same. It's the features and the streamers they're doing that now, and it's fine because I just roll with the punches and I'm packaging my next two things before we go out, but it's frustrating because it's like, I'm doing your job. Like your studio. Remember 5 years ago when you would buy a script and then you would go out to the directors that you wanted,
I mean, it's a wild world out there. So we did a short in 2016 and did a couple festivals in 2017, and we learned a lot of lessons along the way, and hopefully we'll start shooting our next short. The plan is this fall.
Awesome.
And Yeah, I just hopefully our approach works. Maybe someone sees it and be like, "Hey, you guys want to make that a little longer?"
Yeah, 90 minutes longer. Like
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
90 minutes longer.
No, you know what was funny, Joe? Like, just remember because we started. I did actually get to tell Tony Todd that Red River Horror started Tony Todd Tuesday,
He did.
hashtag Tony Todd Tuesday, and he was like, "Oh, that's great. Get in the picture. Come on." No, he was super nice. He met
Yeah.
me and my wife. But it's funny, him, Xander Berkeley, and Devin Sawa all used to interact on Twitter a lot back then. And
Yeah.
it's just funny, like you said, Netflix, like apparently they're really hard to get a hold of and pitch projects to. I remember Devin Sawa was pretty much all but not begging, but he was being very vocal. It's just like, make my effing movie, this thing and that. Like, are they really that tough? Like, is Netflix
Well,
kind of
it's
like the
two things. First of all, I adore Devin. Like he's such a good friend and such a good guy, and I'm just so glad that his career is like re-blossoming because he's just been like such a great workhorse and done so much work. But yeah, the thing with Netflix, I mean, and I've worked for them, the problem with Netflix, it is the problem with
yeah.
Netflix. I mean, they're the OG streamers. Like nobody's ever going to
Mhm.
run them out of business. They can try to, replicate them. But they have algorithms, to attract viewers. And so that's why you see a lot of their movies every 15 minutes, characters will kind of reintroduce themselves or people will explain, they have a certain algorithm, first of all, in general for most of their movies. But they also just as a streaming service, they have subdivisions for every subcategory. So it's like YA horror, then teen horror, then adult horror, and then so they everything is segmented into subcategories. So you can get your script maybe to somebody at Netflix, but if they're like, "Oh, this doesn't work for this division, but it'd be great for the thriller one," and you're like, "Oh, cool, can you send it over?" They're like, "No, we don't. That's not how we do it." So
Yeah.
then you have to kind of start all over and try to get it to
Yeah.
that person. So that's kind of why it's it's a little bit of a tough nut to crack. And also, they've got their, as is their want, they've got their, list of like directors they want to work with and their stars. And, they create a lot of, not only they create a lot of original content, but they also pull in a lot of international stuff, which is great.
Tons.
But they have like, they have the corner marketed on that. It's like nobody's gonna
Yeah.
be able to do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's business. They're powerful enough to say, "We'll come to you if we want you." Not the
if
other
we
way
want
around.
you, and again, it's not impossible to get something on Netflix, and I think that it's great. It's just I do, and I do think it's funny how Ted, the man who owns it, I don't want to mispronounce his last name, but I keep seeing him like doing these speeches where he's like, cinema's gonna die. It's like he's like almost like people don't want, and I'm like, cinema's never gonna die because we're no matter how isolated, certainly COVID got a lot of people isolated, and some people lost their minds, and got depressed, and it was hard to reconnect with people and stuff like that traditionally. But still, as human beings, we always have the desire to be around people and have communal experiences. And that's why, Sinners and Final Destination and Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible, like they've all done so well because they're all communal movies
Mhm.
that you can go and laugh and scream and clutch the edge of your seat. And people are always going to want that experience. And it's, they're just going to be more selective, maybe. Like, it used to be like, oh, I'm going to go see every movie in the theater. And now it's
Yep.
like, well, it's kind of pricey. Unless you got AMC stubs, and then you can see if it's still pricey to buy snacks. So you have to sneak in your snacks. Not that I would ever encourage that. But it's so expensive now to go to the movies that yes, families are going to be more selective and maybe not go to as many as they used to. But there are like 330 million people in this country. Like,
Right. They're gonna go.
yeah. You only need a small fraction of those to go see a movie, and a lot of them go see them twice. So
Sure. Yeah. And you know what? That reminds me, we should plug them every time. The theater at Oaks.
Oh,
So
Oak
there's
Center Cinema.
Oak Center Cinema. This is it used to be a Regal that was closed for about 2 or 3, maybe 4 years.
Yeah, it's
And
cavernous.
This family business bought it, and it's huge, but they've just revived it, and it's cheap. I've never paid more than $12 for a ticket. I think it's usually between $10 and $12, and then with the matinee was $7.
Right.
Nice.
So that's like, it's the goal is to be family friendly. So like,
Yeah.
and the snacks are cheap, so
Yeah.
we're just gonna shout them out every time.
Well,
Yeah, you should, because that's that's the thing is like, yeah, the chains out there, they're trying to find ways to, it's like more people would come if you'd make your tickets a little cheaper, and the snacks a little cheaper. But anytime that there's like especially like a family owned like company that comes up and does it on their own, it's like, it's amazing because I'm sure, they get a lot of great movies there, and I'm sure that the crowds are.
Saw Bloodlines there.
Yeah, cool. So they're getting the good stuff. They're getting
Oh yeah.
Well, Jeffrey, we're catching you the night before a junket. There's a great piece at redriverhorror.com. Your friend Stacey Lane Wilson, she got to write a nice 25th anniversary piece on Final Destination that actually made me tear up, Joe, before we went to see Bloodlines. So I'm just, big fan, and thank you for all your help over the years, and honestly, just your contributions to horror. It's been a big part of my life. So I want to say thank you, and thank you for your time and your willingness to be on the show.
Of course, I appreciate it. And again, my thanks go back to you, because obviously without fans, like, that's the thing. It's a circle of life. It's a circle of life and death. But it is. It's like, without the fans, like, we wouldn't have careers. So it's like, I'm just very grateful. And till we meet again. You seem to be talking like a little bit like pirates when you started the intro of the show. So I was like, are we
a lot of
pirate theme here? Yeah. So I was like. So I was gonna try to think of a pirate thing to say before I.
You're welcome.
Yar. But it's great to see you guys again, and the next time we'll have more awesome stuff to talk about.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Jeffrey Reddick, thank you so much. This has been episode number 115 of the Red River Horror Podcast. And as always, remember to keep traveling those channels of fear.